Be who's got more heart. I'm running them.
He treated me like his hot little whore.
Okay, that's a little too much information.
So this is how it is.
I give it.
Teamwork.
Your associates have taken something of value to me.
The analysis begins with a general overview of the film's release and creative team. The movie was released in the United States on September 1st, 2006, distributed by Lionsgate, and it marks the directorial debut of Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor. The lead cast includes Jason Statham as Chev Chelios, Amy Smart as Eve, Jose Pablo Cantillo as Ricky Verona, Dwight Yoakam as Doc Miles, and Efren Ramirez as Kalo. A full plot summary follows. Chev Chelios, a British hitman working in Los Angeles, wakes up to a video message left by his rival Ricky Verona, revealing that during his sleep he was injected with a deadly synthetic poison of Chinese origin called the Beijing cocktail. The poison's mechanism is explained. The Beijing cocktail is designed to slowly reduce the victim's adrenaline levels, causing the heart rate to drop until death occurs within approximately 1 hour. Chev's only chance for survival is to maintain a constant flow of adrenaline by staying in a state of extreme excitement, anger, and physical activity. This premise drives the entire narrative forward without pause. The plot is an updated, hyperkinetic reinterpretation of the classic thriller DOA, 1950, in which a poisoned man must solve his own murder before time runs out. Moving to critical reception, on Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a tomato meter score of 62% based on 97 reviews, while the audience score exceeds 80% based on over 250,000 ratings. The critics' consensus states, Crank's assaultive style and gleeful depravity may turn off casual action fans, but audiences seeking a strong dose of adrenaline will be thrilled by Jason Statham's raucous race against mortality. The film holds an IMDb rating of 6.9 out of 10 based on approximately 250,000 user ratings, with consistent praise for its originality, pacing, and dark humor. On the French review aggregator Allociné, the press rating is approximately 3.5/5, and the spectator rating is approximately 4.0/5, reflecting strong audience appreciation. Box office performance shows the film was made on a budget of $12 million and grossed approximately $42.9 million worldwide, making it a commercial success that quadrupled its budget. Thematic and stylistic analysis focuses on the film's reputation as a video game movie. Unlike other films that attempted to mimic video games seriously, this one openly satirizes that trend. The directors, Neville Dean and Taylor, explicitly stated, "We wanted to make a movie like a video game, the ultimate ADD movie." The video game aesthetic breaks down into 4 characteristics. First, a mission-based structure. Chev receives quests, such as stay alive, find the antidote, and kill the target. Second, power-ups. Chev consumes drugs, energy drinks, and adrenaline shots exactly like health packs in a video game. Third, GPS navigation. The film uses Google Earth satellite zooms to transition between scenes, showing exactly where the character is moving on the map. Fourth, no time to waste. There are no long dialogues or subplots. The film moves from one action set piece to the next without pause. The adrenaline metaphor runs throughout. The cinematography, editing, and sound design are designed to physically affect the viewer's heart rate. The dizzying camera work, often shot on handheld HDV cameras with operators on rollerblades, combined with the heavy metal soundtrack, places the audience in the same manic mindset as Chev Chelios. As one critic noted, the film is a relentless, high-octane action film that thrives on its breakneck pacing, jump cuts, and kinetic cinematography, all of which are seamlessly integrated into the storytelling. As a genre piece designed to deliver a near-constant dopamine rush, it excels. A deep dive into key scenes begins with the public sex scene in Chinatown. Chev and Eve have very public sex in the middle of Los Angeles' Chinatown to raise his heart rate. The trivia behind this scene reveals that the reactions of the extras, the crowd watching, are 100% real. The directors did not tell the non-actors that this would happen. When Jason Statham and Amy Smart began simulating sex in the street, the shocked faces of the passers-by are genuine. Analysis of this scene shows it breaks the realism barrier of action films. While most action films feature romance in private, this film forces the private act into the public sphere to serve the plot mechanic. The finger gun gag is another key moment. In the final shootout, Chev points his fingers like a gun at a henchman. The henchman flinches, and a bang graphic appears on screen. This self-aware, cartoonish moment solidifies the film as a live-action cartoon or video game, rather than a serious crime drama. The helicopter finale was shot with Jason Statham performing the stunt himself, fighting Jose Pablo Cantillo on a helicopter ladder 3,000 feet above Los Angeles. The directors refused to use CGI or green screens for the stunts, relying on practical effects and stunt work. Turning to production details and trivia, Jason Statham initially refused the role because he did not think he was funny enough to deliver the darkly comic dialogue. The directors told him to play it completely straight, deadpan, and let the absurdity of the situations create the humor. The script was originally written for Johnny Knoxville, of Jackass fame. After he passed, it went to Brad Pitt, then Chris Rock, before landing with Statham. Chester Bennington, the late Linkin Park singer, appears as a stoner in the hospital pharmacy who tells Chev about using a nasal spray inhaler to get high. Video game connections include Sam Witwer, a henchman in the final shootout, who would later voice the protagonist Starkiller in Star Wars: The Force Unleashed video games. Statham himself had done voice work for Red Faction 2 and Call of Duty. Every location in the film was a real, functional location in Los Angeles. The Google Earth zooms correspond to the exact GPS coordinates where the scenes were shot. Regarding legacy and the sequel, this film is often cited by critics like Now Magazine as the greatest hard action movie since Die Hard. It established Neville Dean and Taylor as distinctive voices in action cinema, known for MTV-style editing and gonzo storytelling. The sequel, Crank, High Voltage, 2009, picks up immediately where the first film ends, Chev falling from the sky. The directors doubled down on the absurdity, turning Chev into a quasi-zombie whose heart is kept beating by a mechanical pump and who needs constant electricity to survive. In conclusion, this film is not about realism or deep philosophical meaning. It is a pure genre exercise designed to deliver maximum sensory impact. Strengths include unmatched pacing, Jason Statham's iconic deadpan performance, inventive low-budget stunts, and self-aware humor. Weaknesses include deliberate shallowness. Some viewers find the violence, sex, and political incorrectness off-putting. For fans of high-octane action and cult cinema, this film is a masterpiece of style over substance that executes its vision perfectly. It promises an adrenaline kick to the heart, and it delivers exactly that. The lead cast includes Jason Statham as Chev Chelios, Amy Smart as Eve, Jose Pablo Cantillo as Ricky Verona, Dwight Yoakam as Doc Miles, and Efren Ramirez as Kalo. A full plot summary follows. Chev Chelios, a British hitman working in Los Angeles, wakes up to a video message left by his rival Ricky Verona, revealing that during his sleep he was injected with a deadly synthetic poison of Chinese origin called the Beijing cocktail. The poison's mechanism is explained. The Beijing cocktail is designed to slowly reduce the victim's adrenaline levels, causing the heart rate to drop until death occurs within approximately 1 hour. Chev's only chance for survival is to maintain a constant flow of adrenaline by staying in a state of extreme excitement, anger, and physical activity. This premise drives the entire narrative forward without pause. The plot is an updated, hyperkinetic reinterpretation of the classic thriller DOA, 1950, in which a poisoned man must solve his own murder before time runs out. Moving to critical reception, on Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a tomato meter score of 62% based on 97 reviews, while the audience score exceeds 80% based on over 250,000 ratings. The critics' consensus states, Crank's assaultive style and gleeful depravity may turn off casual action fans, but audiences seeking a strong dose of adrenaline will be thrilled by Jason Statham's raucous race against mortality. The film holds an IMDb rating of 6.9 out of 10 based on approximately 250,000 user ratings, with consistent praise for its originality, pacing, and dark humor. On the French review aggregator Allociné, the press rating is approximately 3.5/5, and the spectator rating is approximately 4.0/5, reflecting strong audience appreciation. Box office performance shows the film was made on a budget of $12 million and grossed approximately $42.9 million worldwide, making it a commercial success that quadrupled its budget. Thematic and stylistic analysis focuses on the film's reputation as a video game movie. Unlike other films that attempted to mimic video games seriously, this one openly satirizes that trend. The directors, Neville Dean and Taylor, explicitly stated, "We wanted to make a movie like a video game, the ultimate ADD movie." The video game aesthetic breaks down into 4 characteristics. First, a mission-based structure. Chev receives quests such as stay alive, find the antidote, and kill the target. Second, power-ups. Chev consumes drugs, energy drinks, and adrenaline shots exactly like health packs in a video game. Third, GPS navigation. The film uses Google Earth satellite zooms to transition between scenes, showing exactly where the character is moving on the map. Fourth, no time to waste. There are no long dialogues or subplots. The film moves from one action set piece to the next without pause. The adrenaline metaphor runs throughout. The cinematography, editing, and sound design are designed to physically affect the viewer's heart rate. The dizzying camera work, often shot on handheld HDV cameras with operators on rollerblades, combined with the heavy metal soundtrack, places the audience in the same manic mindset as Chev Chelios. As one critic noted, the film is a relentless, high-octane action film that thrives on its breakneck pacing, jump cuts, and kinetic cinematography, all of which are seamlessly integrated into the storytelling. As a genre piece designed to deliver a near-constant dopamine rush, it excels. A deep dive into key scenes begins with the public sex scene in Chinatown. Chev and Eve have very public sex in the middle of Los Angeles' Chinatown to raise his heart rate. The trivia behind this scene reveals that the reactions of the extras, the crowd watching, are 100% real. The directors did not tell the non-actors that this would happen. When Jason Statham and Amy Smart began simulating sex in the street, the shocked faces of the passers-by are genuine. Analysis of this scene shows it breaks the realism barrier of action films. While most action films feature romance in private, this film forces the private act into the public sphere to serve the plot mechanic. The finger gun gag is another key moment. In the final shootout, Chev points his fingers like a gun at a henchman. The henchman flinches and a bang graphic appears on screen. This self-aware, cartoonish moment solidifies the film as a live-action cartoon or video game rather than a serious crime drama. The helicopter finale was shot with Jason Statham performing the stunt himself, fighting Jose Pablo Cantillo on a helicopter ladder 3,000 feet above Los Angeles. The directors refused to use CGI or green screens for the stunts, relying on practical effects and stunt work. Turning to production details and trivia, Jason Statham initially refused the role because he did not think he was funny enough to deliver the darkly comic dialogue. The directors told him to play it completely straight, deadpan, and let the absurdity of the situations create the humor. The script was originally written for Johnny Knoxville of Jackass fame. After he passed, it went to Brad Pitt, then Chris Rock, before landing with Statham. Chester Bennington, the late Linkin Park singer, appears as a stoner in the hospital pharmacy who tells Chev about using a nasal spray inhaler to get high. Video game connections include Sam Witwer, a henchman in the final shootout, who would later voice the protagonist Starkiller in Star Wars. The Force Unleashed video games. Statham himself had done voice work for Red Faction 2 and Call of Duty. Every location in the film was a real, functional location in Los Angeles. The Google Earth zooms correspond to the exact GPS coordinates where the scenes were shot. Regarding legacy and the sequel, this film is often cited by critics like Now magazine as the greatest hard action movie since Die Hard. It established Neveldine and Taylor as distinctive voices in action cinema, known for MTV-style editing and gonzo storytelling. The sequel, Crank, High Voltage, 2009, picks up immediately where the first film ends, Chev falling from the sky. The directors doubled down on the absurdity, turning Chev into a quasi-zombie whose heart is kept beating by a mechanical pump and who needs constant electricity to survive. In conclusion, this film is not about realism or deep philosophical meaning. It is a pure genre exercise designed to deliver maximum sensory impact. Strengths include unmatched pacing, Jason Statham's iconic deadpan performance, inventive low-budget stunts, and self-aware humor. Weaknesses include deliberate shallowness. Some viewers find the violence, sex, and political incorrectness off-putting. For fans of high-octane action and cult cinema, this film is a masterpiece of style over substance that executes its vision perfectly. It promises an adrenaline kick to the heart, and it delivers exactly that. The opening shot of Chev Chelios waking up disoriented immediately establishes the film's relentless energy and stakes. Viewers notice his blurred vision and sluggish movements, which sharply contrast with every action that follows later in the narrative. This initial lethargy serves as the baseline from which the film's frantic pace will constantly deviate upward. The video message from Ricky Verona is shot in a cold, clinical digital style that feels invasive and deeply personal. Chev's reaction is not one of panic, but of cold, calculated rage, showcasing his profession's emotional conditioning. He checks his body for the injection site, finding a small wound on his neck that confirms the nightmare is real. The countdown mechanism of the poison is never shown on screen as a digital clock, but the audience feels it through every editing choice. Each scene transition becomes a heartbeat, pushing the character forward before he has time to breathe or think. The film refuses to give Chev any moment of quiet contemplation because that luxury would literally kill him. This structural decision transforms the viewing experience into something closer to a workout than traditional cinema. The audience's sympathetic nervous system activates in response to the constant sensory overload. Sound design plays a crucial role here, with ambient noise often replaced by thumping electronic beats that mimic a racing pulse. The color palette shifts from cool morning blues to harsh, sun-baked yellows as Chev storms through Los Angeles. Every element of mise-en-scene conspires to eliminate any sense of safety or rest. This opening gambit tells viewers immediately that conventional storytelling rules have been thrown out the window. The character of Chev Chelios subverts the typical action hero archetype in several meaningful ways despite his superficially tough exterior. Unlike the invincible heroes of Schwarzenegger or Stallone films, Chev is dying from the very first frame and never escapes this vulnerability. His toughness comes not from physical dominance, but from sheer refusal to accept death as an option before completing his goals. The film presents a hitman protagonist without any moral redemption arc, yet audiences root for him unconditionally. This paradoxical sympathy arises from the universal fear of being poisoned without one's knowledge or consent. Chev never claims to be a good man, and the film never asks him to apologize for his profession. His relationship with violence is transactional rather than sadistic, a tool rather than a pleasure. Jason Statham's performance emphasizes economy of movement and expression, each gesture serving a practical purpose. There is no wasted energy in Chev's actions because his energy reserves are literally depleting by the second. His British accent amidst the Los Angeles criminal underworld marks him as an outsider who has carved his own territory. The The script provides minimal backstory, suggesting that who Chev was before this day is irrelevant to his current predicament. His driving motivation shifts from professional obligation to personal vengeance to pure biological survival as the film progresses. This evolution feels organic because each stage is dictated by his deteriorating physical condition. The character becomes a pure expression of will, stripped of all social niceties and strategic patience. Chev Chelios exists as a pressure test of how much punishment a human body can endure before the spirit finally breaks. Eve, played by Amy Smart, represents far more than a simple love interest or damsel in distress within the film's economy. Her introduction occurs through a photograph that Chev kisses desperately, immediately establishing her as his emotional anchor. When Chev finally reaches her apartment, she is initially angry and confused by his aggressive, nonsensical behavior. The film takes time to show their genuine history together through brief flashbacks and affectionate gestures. Eve works as a receptionist, a mundane job that contrasts sharply with Chev's world of violence and death. She is not a trained fighter or a criminal accomplice, making her reactions more relatable to the average viewer. Despite her ordinary background, Eve displays remarkable courage once she understands Chev's life-or-death situation. Her decision to help him, including the infamous public sex act, demonstrates love as an active, risk-taking force. The film never punishes her for her involvement or reduces her to a victim needing rescue at the climax. She drives, she distracts enemies, and she administers medical aid with whatever resources are available. Amy Smart brings a grounded emotional reality that prevents the film from becoming completely cartoonish. Her chemistry with Statham balances his stoic intensity with genuine warmth and vulnerability. Eve's dialogue includes sharp, funny reactions to Chev's absurd requests, providing comic relief without mocking the premise. She asks practical questions about the poison and its effects, serving as the audience's surrogate within the story. Their relationship, though sketched lightly, provides the only emotional stakes beyond Chev's own survival. Ricky Verona functions as an effective antagonist precisely because he mirrors Chev while representing a darker path. Played by Jose Pablo Cantillo, Verona is younger, more impulsive, and more openly cruel than his rival. His decision to use the Beijing cocktail, rather than a bullet, reflects a desire to torture Chev slowly. Verona films Chev's unconscious body and the injection procedure, demonstrating a performative cruelty that enjoys an audience. He works for Carlito, a larger crime boss, but clearly nurses a personal grudge against Chev specifically. The film hints at past betrayals and turf wars without over-explaining, trusting the audience to fill in the gaps. Verona moves through Los Angeles with a posse of equally young, reckless henchmen who share his sadistic energy. His fighting style contrasts with Chev's efficient brutality, favoring flashy moves and unnecessary risks. The character serves as a warning about what Chev might become without his moral anchor in Eve. Verona's downfall comes from his love of spectacle, as he could have killed Chev multiple times but chose to watch instead. He represents the new generation of criminals who prioritize image and reputation over practical outcomes. The film's final confrontation strips away Verona's bravado, revealing him as scared and desperate when his advantages disappear. His death is not cathartic in a heroic sense, but simply necessary, another task on Chev's checklist. Verona's name itself suggests Verona, as in Shakespeare's Italian city of feuding families, implying a cyclical, generational conflict. The character never becomes a cartoon villain, remaining recognizably human in his pettiness and ambition. Doc Miles, portrayed by country singer Dwight Yoakam, serves as the film's eccentric mentor figure and medical lifeline. He operates out of a cluttered office that resembles a veterinary clinic more than a legitimate medical practice. Doc Miles has clearly treated Chev before, indicating a long professional relationship built on mutual distrust and respect. His dialogue is delivered in a calm, almost bored drawl that contrasts sharply with the film's frantic pacing. He explains the Beijing cocktail's effects with clinical detachment, treating death as an interesting puzzle rather than a tragedy. Doc Miles refuses to help Chev directly, but provides crucial information about adrenaline maintenance and potential antidotes. His moral ambiguity is never resolved because the film has no interest in traditional ethical frameworks. The character exists as a practical resource, a quest giver who points Chev toward the next objective marker. Yoakam's performance adds a layer of weird authenticity that grounds the film's more outlandish elements. Doc Miles appears only twice, but each appearance resets the audience's understanding of Chev's medical condition. His final scene involves him watching Chev's televised rampage with professional curiosity rather than horror or sympathy. This detachment mirrors the film's own attitude toward its protagonist's suffering, treating it as spectacle. Doc Miles represents the logical endpoint of a life lived entirely in the criminal underworld's service economy. He has seen so many violent deaths that each new one becomes just another data point. The character's eccentricity prevents him from becoming cold or unsympathetic, maintaining the film's darkly comic tone throughout. The Beijing cocktail as a narrative device allows the film to explore Los Angeles as a living, breathing organism of extreme experiences. Chev's journey takes him from wealthy penthouses to gritty street corners, covering the city's full socioeconomic spectrum. Each location is rendered with documentary-like authenticity, thanks to the director's commitment to real, functional spaces. The Google Earth transitions transform the city into a game map, with Chev as a player-controlled avatar moving between waypoints. Los Angeles becomes a pharmacy of adrenaline sources, from drug dens to shopping malls to freeway chases. The film celebrates the city's diversity by featuring Korean shopkeepers, Latino gang members, Chinese herbalists, and white-collar professionals. Chev interacts with each community not as a tourist, but as a desperate man using whatever resources are available. The city's geography dictates the film's pacing, with long takes of driving compressed into seconds through satellite imagery. Public spaces become stages for private desperation as Chev fights, fucks, and kills in full view of shocked bystanders. The film refuses to romanticize Los Angeles, showing its smog, traffic, and superficial beauty without filter. Yet there is an undeniable love for the city's chaotic energy, its willingness to accommodate any human behavior. Chev's journey follows a rough north-south trajectory that mirrors a heart's electrical impulse moving through cardiac tissue. The climax occurs on a rooftop overlooking downtown, a traditional cinematic vantage point that here feels earned through exhaustion. Los Angeles in Crank is neither a dream factory nor a dystopian hellscape, but simply a vast machine of cause and effect. The city becomes a character not through personification, but through its absolute indifference to Chev's suffering. The film's editing style, credited to Peter Franklin, deserves recognition as a primary engine of its manic energy. Franklin employs jump cuts that skip fractions of seconds within continuous actions, creating a stuttering, breathless rhythm. Transitions often occur through whip pans, digital glitches, and split-second fades that disorient traditional spatial awareness. The average shot length in Crank is approximately 2 to 3 seconds, far below Hollywood action film standards. Franklin intercuts between Chev's subjective experience and objective observation, blurring the line between reality and perception. When Chev takes adrenaline-boosting substances, the editing accelerates to match his heightened physiological state. Slow motion is used sparingly and only to emphasize moments of relative calm or unusual violence. The film incorporates freeze frames, pixelation, and color desaturation as digital effects that reference early internet video culture. Text messages, phone screens, and GPS coordinates appear as on-screen graphics, breaking the fourth wall playfully. Franklin never allows any single image to linger long enough for the audience to feel comfortable or settled. This editing philosophy treats every frame as expendable, always pushing toward the next moment of impact. The result is a film that feels shorter than its 88-minute runtime because no second is wasted on exposition. Critics who dislike the style call it MTV editing as a pejorative, but this misunderstands the film's intentions. Franklin's work is not lazy or random, but meticulously designed to produce a specific physiological response. The editing becomes invisible in its effectiveness, as viewers rarely notice the cuts despite their frequency. Sound design and the musical score by Paul Hasslinger operate as a secondary nervous system for the film's body. Hasslinger, a former member of the German electronic group Tangerine Dream, brings a techno-infused sensibility to the action genre. The score blends pulsating synthesizers, distorted guitar riffs, and sampled dialogue into a continuous sonic assault. Unlike traditional action scores that rise and fall with narrative tension, this music maintains near-constant intensity throughout. Diegetic sounds like heartbeats, breathing, and footsteps are amplified to unnatural levels, becoming part of the rhythmic structure. When Chev's heart rate drops dangerously, the sound design mimics bradycardia with slowed, irregular bass pulses. Gunshots, car crashes, and explosions are mixed with deliberate artificiality, sounding more like video game effects than realistic audio. The film uses silence as a weapon, dropping all sound briefly before a major impact to maximize shock value. Haslinger incorporates found sounds from the Los Angeles environment, turning city noise into musical texture. Dialogue is sometimes submerged beneath music and effects, forcing viewers to lean in and pay closer attention. This mixing choice reflects Chev's own deteriorating cognitive state as the poison affects his neural processing. The score references classic action films of the 1980s while updating their orchestral bombast for the digital age. Each action set piece has its own rhythmic identity, preventing the soundtrack from becoming monotonous despite its intensity. The final sequence combines all musical elements into a crescendo that coincides with Chev's physiological peak. Sound design in Crank is not an accessory to the image, but an equal partner in creating the film's unique sensory world. The film's approach to violence oscillates between cartoonish excess and startling, uncomfortable realism. Shootouts feature enemies flying backward from bullet impacts in ways that defy physics but satisfy video game expectations. Blood splatter is exaggerated and often brightly colored, resembling paint more than bodily fluid. Yet Chev's own injuries accumulate visibly over the runtime, with bruises, cuts, and burns persisting between scenes. The film shows him applying makeshift bandages, injecting himself with stolen medical supplies, and vomiting from the poison's effects. This combination of fantasy violence and gritty consequence creates a unique tonal tightrope that the film walks confidently. The infamous fight through the hotel corridor involves Chev shooting a henchman through a door without seeing his target. Another sequence shows him beating a gang member with a television set, using whatever object is within reach. The violence is never balletic or stylized in the Hong Kong action cinema tradition. Instead, it is desperate, ugly, and fueled by survival instinct rather than martial prowess. Chev fights dirty, going for eyes, throats, and groins with no concern for honor or fairness. The film refuses to let violence be cool or aspirational, despite its video game presentation. Each kill costs Chev energy that he cannot afford to spend, creating a cruel feedback loop. The audience cheers for violence while simultaneously understanding its physical toll on the protagonist. This contradiction lies at the heart of Crank's commentary on action cinema as a genre. The Chinatown public sex scene has generated more analysis than any other sequence in the film for obvious reasons. Beyond its shock value, the scene serves as a perfect distillation of the film's core themes and methods. Chev's need to raise his heart rate forces private intimacy into public view, eliminating the boundary between personal and social space. The scene is shot with a mixture of handheld close-ups and wider shots that capture genuine bystander reactions. Amy Smart's performance here required significant trust in the directors and her co-star, as the scene could have easily become exploitative. Instead, Eve is portrayed as an active participant who makes a conscious choice to help Chev survive. The scene's humor derives from the contrast between Chev's medical urgency and the crowd's moral confusion. Police arrive and initially seem ready to arrest the couple, but Chev's gun changes the dynamic instantly. The scene lasts approximately 2 minutes of screen time, an eternity in a film this fast-paced. Directors Neveldine and Taylor have discussed how they wanted to push the R rating to its absolute limit. The MPAA initially threatened an NC-17 rating, requiring some cuts to achieve the final theatrical release. Even in its edited form, the scene remains the film's most controversial and memorable sequence. Feminist readings of the scene note that Eve's agency is preserved despite the scene's outrageous premise. She initiates the act, controls its pacing, and suffers no narrative punishment for her sexual behavior. The scene encapsulates everything that makes Crank unique: absurd, offensive, hilarious, and somehow emotionally sincere. The hospital pharmacy sequence introduces Chester Bennington's cameo and provides crucial exposition about adrenaline sources. Chev enters the hospital not for legitimate treatment, but to raid the pharmacy for epinephrine and other stimulants. Bennington's character, a stoner who works in the pharmacy, mistakes Chev for another drug seeker at first. Their interaction is played for dark comedy, with Bennington calmly explaining which drugs produce which effects. The scene reveals that nasal spray inhalers containing synthetic adrenaline can provide temporary heart rate boosts. Chev tests this information immediately, snorting an entire inhaler's contents in a single desperate breath. The pharmacy becomes a level in the video game, with Chev dodging security guards while looting medical supplies. Bennington's character does not judge Chev or ask questions, simply providing information as a fellow outsider. His calm, amused demeanor contrasts with Chev's frantic energy, creating an effective comic rhythm. The scene ends with Chev injecting himself with stolen epinephrine, a moment of genuine medical horror. Needle close-ups are rare in action films, but Crank lingers on them to emphasize Chev's physical desperation. This sequence demonstrates the film's ability to find comedy in genuinely dark situations without mocking the underlying stakes. Chester Bennington's performance is brief but memorable, adding to the film's eclectic casting choices. The pharmacy raid provides Chev with tools that will sustain him through the film's final act. Every element of this scene serves either plot advancement, character development, or tonal reinforcement, with no waste. The film's depiction of ethnic and cultural groups has drawn both criticism and defense from various quarters. Chev's interactions with Korean gangsters, Latino cartel members, and Chinese herbalists could be read as stereotypical. However, the film applies its cartoon logic equally to all groups, including white characters who are equally exaggerated. The Chinese herbalist who provides an adrenaline-boosting tea is portrayed as wise and helpful rather than villainous. Korean characters speak Korean to each other with subtitles, a sign of respect for linguistic authenticity often missing in Hollywood. The film's villain, Carlito, is a white businessman who exploits Latino gang members for his own profit. Chev himself is British, making him an outsider to all of Los Angeles's ethnic communities he passes through. The film never suggests that any ethnic group is inherently more criminal or violent than any other. Violence in Crank is transactional and individual, not a commentary on any community's moral character. The directors have stated they wanted to show Los Angeles as it actually exists, a multilingual, multicultural metropolis. Background extras reflect the city's actual demographic diversity, not a Hollywood homogenized version. The film's politics are too chaotic and ironic to support any straightforward reading of its racial depictions. Viewers who find the film offensive are responding to its tone, not any specific malicious intent. Crank is an equal opportunity offender, satirizing action movie tropes rather than real-world cultures. The film's primary allegiance is to chaos, not to any political or social agenda. This anarchic sensibility prevents easy categorization as either progressive or regressive in its cultural representations. The car chase sequences in Crank deliberately reject the conventions established by films like Bullet or The French Connection. Traditional car chases prioritize spatial geography and vehicular choreography, allowing viewers to follow the action clearly. Crank's chases are fragmented, disorienting, and shot from bizarre angles that obscure rather than reveal spatial relationships. Chev drives a stolen Dodge Charger, a classic American muscle car that references 1970s action cinema. The camera often mounts to the car's exterior, capturing speed without providing navigational context. Intersections are crossed with digital maps superimposed, telling viewers where Chev is rather than showing them. The film uses rear projection and green screen effects deliberately, creating artificiality that references old Hollywood. Chev drives while injecting drugs, answering phone calls, and checking his GPS, multitasking behind the wheel. Crash impacts are shown from inside the vehicle, emphasizing the physical shock rather than the vehicular damage. Other drivers on the road react with genuine surprise because many were not told a film was shooting nearby. The chase sequences prioritize sensory experience over narrative clarity, favoring feeling over understanding. Speeds are conveyed through sound design and vibration rather than through traditional establishing shots. Chev's deteriorating physical condition affects his driving, with swerves and missed turns becoming more frequent. The film's budget prevented extended, multi-vehicle chases, so creativity substituted for scale. Each chase is brief but intense, a sprint rather than a marathon in action cinema terms. This approach keeps the film moving forward without the pacing lulls that longer chase sequences create. The film's color grading shifts subtly throughout the runtime to reflect Chev's changing physiological state. Early scenes feature cool blues and greens, suggesting the clinical chill of a hospital or morgue. As Chev's adrenaline rises, the palette warms toward yellows and oranges, mimicking the body's increasing temperature. The infamous Chinatown sequence is bathed in neon reds and pinks, colors associated with arousal and danger. Outdoor scenes under Los Angeles sunlight are blown out and overexposed, creating a harsh, unforgiving visual texture. Night scenes use deep blues and purples, with artificial lights creating isolated islands of visibility. When Chev's heart rate drops dangerously, the color desaturates toward black and white, signaling impending death. Adrenaline spikes bring sudden saturation increases, as if the film itself is experiencing a rush. The final sequence on the rooftop uses golden hour light, traditionally associated with romance or endings. This color arc follows the same trajectory as a human body under extreme stress, from cool to hot to cool again. Digital grading allows the film to shift hues within single shots, responding to Chev's heartbeat. Skin tones become increasingly flushed and unhealthy as the poison spreads through Chev's system. Environmental colors bleed into characters' faces, suggesting the city itself is infecting Chev. The grading choices are exaggerated beyond naturalism, part of the film's overall hyper-stylized aesthetic. Yet the underlying physiological logic gives these choices coherence beyond mere visual flash. Color becomes another tool for storytelling, another channel for conveying information without dialogue. The film's relationship with time is deliberately distorted, reflecting Chev's subjective experience of his final hours. Traditional films maintain consistent temporal logic, allowing viewers to track how much time has passed. Crank's 88-minute runtime roughly corresponds to the Beijing Cocktail's predicted 1-hour survival window. However, within that hour, Chev experiences time as elastic, with seconds feeling like minutes during extreme stress. The film uses slow motion to represent moments of hyper-awareness when Chev's senses sharpen beyond normal capacity. Fast motion, undercranking, suggests adrenaline rushes that make the world seem to slow down around Chev. No on-screen clock or countdown timer appears, forcing viewers to feel time rather than measure it. Scene transitions sometimes skip forward minutes or seconds without warning, disorienting linear expectations. Chev's repeated checking of his watch grounds the film in real time while his actions strain credibility. The directors have compared this approach to the television show 24, but compressed into real-time chaos. Sunrise and sunset occur appropriately within the film's geography, providing external time references. Chev accomplishes an impossible number of tasks within his hour, suggesting the poison accelerates his perception. The film asks audiences to accept this temporal elasticity as a subjective truth rather than objective reality. Time becomes another resource that Chev must manage, like adrenaline or ammunition. Running out of time means running out of life, the most fundamental scarcity imaginable. This temporal pressure transforms every scene into a race against an invisible, inexorable finish line. The practical stunts and effects in Crank represent a deliberate rejection of late 1990s CGI excess. Directors Neveldine and Taylor came from a background in independent filmmaking and skateboard videos. They shot much of the film on handheld Sony HDV cameras, consumer-grade equipment used creatively. The helicopter ladder sequence was performed by Jason Statham himself, suspended thousands of feet above Los Angeles. Statham had to hang from the ladder with one hand while fighting Cantillo with the other, no safety nets below. The film's car crashes used real vehicles destroyed practically, with cameras placed inside the wreckage. Gunfire muzzle flashes were mostly practical, created with squibs and flash units rather than digital effects. The directors strapped cameras to rollerblades, skateboards, and even their own bodies to achieve unique camera movement. Amy Smart performed her own stunts in the Chinatown sequence, including running through traffic without a stunt double. The hospital shootout required coordinating with real hospital staff who were not all informed about the filming. Explosions were achieved with practical pyrotechnics, forcing actors to run through real fire and debris. This commitment to practical effects gives the film a texture that CGI-heavy action movies lack. Physical objects have weight, mass, and unpredictable behavior that digital simulations cannot replicate perfectly. The grain and imperfections of the HDV cameras add documentary authenticity to even the most absurd scenes. Actors' performances benefit from reacting to real explosions, real crashes, and real physical danger. Crank looks and feels like a film made by people who love the messy, dangerous craft of practical filmmaking. The screenplay's dialogue is lean, functional, and surprisingly witty given the film's relentless pacing. Jason Statham's deadpan delivery transforms potentially clunky lines into moments of dark comedy. Chev's one-liners are minimal and often drowned out by action, rewarding repeat viewings. Eve's dialogue provides emotional grounding, asking the human questions that the plot would otherwise ignore. Verona's taunts are juvenile and cruel, revealing his character's immaturity without lengthy exposition. Doc Miles speaks in medical jargon that Chev clearly does not understand, creating unintentional comedy. The film avoids voiceover narration despite the temptation to explain Chev's internal state. Conversations are interrupted by action, phone calls dropped, sentences left unfinished as emergencies arise. This fragmentary dialogue feels realistic for a man whose brain is slowly shutting down from poison. Characters speak over each other, interrupt, and fail to hear important information due to ambient noise. The screenplay trusts audiences to infer backstory and motivation from behavior rather than explicit explanation. Swear words are used creatively and frequently, reflecting the authentic speech patterns of stressed criminals. The film's funniest lines often come from minor characters reacting to Chev's bizarre behavior. A parking attendant's complaint about Chev not paying becomes hilarious given the life-or-death context. The dialogue never rises above B-movie quality, but it never aspires to anything more pretentious. The film's treatment of masculinity offers a complex portrait that both embraces and critiques action hero conventions. Chev Chelios is physically powerful but constantly vulnerable, injured, and dependent on others for survival. He requires Eve's help, Doc Miles's information, and even strangers' unwitting participation in his survival plan. Traditional action heroes solve problems through solitary violence, while Chev solves problems through desperate improvisation and cooperation. His emotional range extends beyond anger to include fear, tenderness, and even moments of genuine confusion. The film shows Chev crying, not from weakness but from the overwhelming physical pain of the poison. His relationship with Eve is built on genuine affection rather than conquest or protection alone. Chev apologizes to her, thanks her, and tries to send her to safety despite his own needs. Yet the film also celebrates traditionally masculine traits like endurance, aggression, and refusal to accept defeat. The public sex scene complicates masculinity by making Chev sexually vulnerable in a public space. He is penetrated by injection and displayed, positions traditionally associated with femininity in cinema. The film never acknowledges this subversion explicitly, allowing it to operate beneath the surface. Chev's final act is one of self-sacrifice, choosing revenge over survival in a traditionally heroic gesture. However, that choice is also selfish, prioritizing his own satisfaction over any future with Eve. The film offers no clear moral judgment, presenting masculinity as a set of tools rather than an identity. The role of technology in Crank reflects mid-2000s anxieties about digital connectivity and surveillance. Chev uses a flip phone, GPS navigation, and a laptop computer, all period-appropriate technology for 2006. The Google Earth transitions represent a new form of cinematic geography enabled by consumer digital mapping services. Characters track Chev's movements through his phone's signal, turning personal technology into a vulnerability. Chev uses the internet to research the Beijing cocktail, finding information that saves his life. The film's digital video aesthetic mimics the look of amateur online content from the early YouTube era. Surveillance cameras appear throughout the film, watching Chev without his knowledge or consent. Text messages appear as on-screen graphics, a technique that has since become common but felt innovative in 2006. The film anticipates the smartphone era without yet having the vocabulary to describe it fully. Chev's relationship with technology is purely instrumental. He uses tools without fetishizing or fearing them. The film never moralizes about technology's dangers or benefits, treating it as environmental background. Video game aesthetics permeate the film's structure, from mission-based narrative to power-up logic. However, the film also shows the physical toll that game actions would take on a real human body. This tension between digital abstraction and biological reality drives much of the film's dark comedy. Crank exists at a historical moment when digital and physical realities were beginning to merge inextricably. The film's technological texture is now a time capsule, preserving the look and feel of mid-2000s media. The film's marketing campaign emphasized its adrenaline premise with posters featuring Statham in medical distress. Lionsgate released the film in September 2006, a month typically reserved for lower-profile genre releases. The trailer emphasized the video game comparisons, showing the Google Earth transitions and on-screen graphics. Early word of mouth from festivals like Sundance positioned the film as a cult classic in waiting. The poster tagline read, "There are over 86 billion neurons in the human brain. This film is about all of them." Critical reviews were divided, with some praising the film's energy and others dismissing it as empty spectacle. The film found its audience on DVD and home video, where repeat viewings became common. Statham's existing fanbase from The Transporter and Lock, Stock followed him to this weirder project. The film's box office success relative to its budget ensured that a sequel would be greenlit quickly. Crank's marketing targeted young male audiences who played video games and watched MTV. However, the film's cult following has since expanded to include action cinema scholars and genre enthusiasts. The Chinatown scene became the film's most discussed and shared element, driving curiosity and controversy. Lionsgate leaned into the film's outrageousness, avoiding any pretense of prestige or respectability. The marketing campaign accurately represented the film's content, a rarity in Hollywood advertising. Crank sold itself as a shot of pure cinematic adrenaline, and that is exactly what audiences received. The film's critical reevaluation over the past decade has been notable among action cinema scholars. Initial reviews often dismissed Crank as style without substance, a criticism now seen as missing the point. Scholars have since identified the film as a key text in understanding post-9/11 American action cinema. The film's paranoia about invisible threats and biological vulnerability resonates with post-9/11 anxieties. Chev's constant movement reflects a national moment of restless, anxious energy with no clear outlet. The film's rejection of traditional narrative structure anticipates the post-continuity, editing style of later digital cinema. Academic writing on Crank often cites it as an example of intensified continuity, pushed to its logical extreme. The film's video game structure has been analyzed as a response to the gaming industry's growing cultural dominance. Feminist readings have complicated initial dismissals of the film as simply misogynistic or juvenile. The public sex scene has been reinterpreted as a commentary on surveillance culture and public space. Film theorists have noted the film's debt to the French New Wave's love of American genre cinema. Directors Neveldine and Taylor are now recognized as significant figures in 2000s action cinema's experimental wing. Crank sits alongside films like Domino and Running Scared as examples of mid-2000s hyperkinetic cinema. The film's influence can be seen in later works like Hardcore Henry and the John Wick franchise. What was once dismissed as empty spectacle is now understood as a deliberate, knowing artistic statement. Crank's reputation has followed the classic cult trajectory, from derided to defended to celebrated. The sequel, Crank, High Voltage, expands the first film's ideas to the point of near-abstract insanity. Chev survives his fall from the helicopter, but is surgically harvested for his heart, which is replaced by an artificial pump. The sequel requires Chev to maintain constant electrical shocks, rather than adrenaline, to keep his heart beating. This premise amplifies the first film's video game logic, adding a battery mechanic to the health bar. The sequel features a giant Godzilla-like fight sequence, a car race where Chev drives while on fire, and a cameo by Ron Jeremy. Critical reception was similar to the first film, with some critics finding the sequel exhausting even by Crank standards. High Voltage doubles down on the racial stereotypes, including a sequence where Chev is forced to impersonate an Asian stereotype. The sequel's treatment of Eve is more problematic, reducing her role and subjecting her to greater humiliation. Despite these issues, High Voltage has its own defenders who appreciate its refusal to compromise or mature. The sequel ends with Chev seemingly dying again, leaving room for a third film that has never materialized. Neveldine and Taylor have discussed a potential Crank 3D that would have used stereoscopic technology. The sequel's budget was slightly higher than the first film, but its box office returns were lower. High Voltage remains a divisive film, beloved by some and despised by others within the cult fanbase. The two films together form a diptych that exhausts the possibilities of the adrenaline premise. For most viewers, the first Crank remains the superior achievement, a perfect closed loop of concept and execution. The film's costume design, by Christopher Lawrence, deserves mention for its functional simplicity. Chev wears a dark brown leather jacket, a gray t-shirt, and jeans throughout the entire film. This wardrobe becomes increasingly damaged, blood-stained, and disheveled as Chev's body deteriorates. The jacket's leather material is practical for stunt work, protecting Statham during falls and fights. Eve's clothing shifts from casual home wear to practical running clothes as she joins Chev's mission. Verona dresses in flashier, more expensive clothing, signaling his relative youth and insecurity. Doc Miles wears a bowling shirt and casual pants, suggesting a man who has stopped trying to impress anyone. The film avoids the glossy, designed look of action cinema, favoring clothes that look lived in and real. Costume changes are minimal because the film's timeline allows no time for wardrobe adjustments. Blood and dirt accumulate realistically, with no magical cleaning between scenes. Chev's shoes are notably practical for running, a small detail that reflects the film's attention to physical logic. The film's villains dress in dark suits that recall classic gangster cinema without specific homage. Background characters wear the ordinary clothing of Los Angeles residents, avoiding extras as colorful stereotypes. Costume design serves character and function rather than fashion or iconography. Chev's outfit has become iconic among fans, recognizable in silhouette as the crank look. This simplicity allows the performance and action to dominate visual attention. The film's use of Los Angeles landmarks provides a tour of the city's underbelly rather than its tourist attractions. Chev visits the Grand Central Market, a historic downtown food hall that retains its working-class character. The Chinatown sequence uses authentic streets and storefronts, not a studio backlit or set. Chev runs through the Los Angeles River's concrete channels, a location famous from Grease and Terminator 2. The hospital exterior is a real medical facility, though interior scenes were shot on a modified set. Chev's apartment building stands in a real residential neighborhood, not a controlled studio environment. The film's finale takes place on a rooftop overlooking the downtown skyline, accessible only by climbing. Google Earth transitions show real street names, intersections, and distances between locations. Viewers familiar with Los Angeles can trace Chev's route and note its geographic coherence. The film avoids the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Beverly Hills mansions, and other iconic tourist sites. This choice reflects Chev's position as a working criminal rather than a movie star or tourist. Los Angeles appears as a city of errands, traffic, and functional spaces rather than glamorous dreams. The film's authenticity extends to its depiction of the city's light, air quality, and ambient noise. Local residents have noted that Crank captures the feeling of Los Angeles better than many prestige films. The city becomes a maze Chev must navigate, an adversary as much as an environment. This geographic specificity grounds the film's absurdity in recognizable, tactile reality. The film's opening credits sequence immediately establishes its aesthetic and tonal intentions. The title Crank appears in a jagged, electric font that suggests medical equipment or car engines. Credits flash rapidly over shots of Chev sleeping, his chest rising and falling in slow motion. The main theme begins as a low electronic pulse that builds into a full techno beat. Director credits appear over shots of Los Angeles waking up, traffic building, the city coming to life. Statham's name appears largest, acknowledging his star power as the film's primary selling point. The credits avoid listing crew members beyond key positions, maintaining the film's stripped-down feel. No song with lyrics plays over the credits, avoiding the typical action movie soundtrack cliché. The credits sequence lasts less than 90 seconds, thrusting viewers directly into the story. This efficiency signals that the film will not waste time on traditional formalities. The final credit appears just as Chev opens his eyes, linking title and narrative seamlessly. Viewers who blink during the credits will miss them entirely, encouraging attention from the first frame. The credit design's rough, digital aesthetic matches the film's handheld shooting style. No studio logo appears before the film, opening directly with the Lionsgate distribution card. This choice removes any separation between audience and story, beginning the assault immediately. The credit sequence functions as a tone poem, preparing viewers for the experience to come. The film's treatment of pharmacology reflects a genuine understanding of how stimulants affect the human body. Adrenaline, epinephrine, increases heart rate, blood pressure, and glucose release, exactly as the film depicts. The Beijing cocktail is fictional but based on real poisons that interfere with catecholamine production. Chev's use of nasal spray inhalers containing synthetic adrenaline has a basis in actual substance abuse patterns. The film shows the crash that follows adrenaline spikes, the dangerous trough after each peak. Chev consumes energy drinks, caffeine pills, and illegal stimulants, all of which would provide temporary boosts. The hospital pharmacy sequence accurately depicts which medications are stimulants and which are depressants. Doc Miles's medical advice, though simplified, follows actual emergency medicine protocols for bradycardia. The film acknowledges that stimulants cannot indefinitely override a poison's lethal mechanism. Chev's physical deterioration matches the known effects of severe stimulant overdose: sweating, tremors, paranoia, and cardiac stress. The film avoids the Hollywood trope of magic antidotes that instantly solve poisonings. Instead, Chev's survival depends on continuously managing symptoms, rather than curing the underlying condition. This pharmacological realism within an absurd premise creates the film's signature tonal friction. Medical professionals have noted that the film's depiction of stimulant effects is surprisingly accurate. Crank functions as an accidental educational film about how adrenaline works in the human body. The science is simplified but not entirely fabricated, grounding fantasy in biological reality. The film's legacy within Jason Statham's career is significant, representing his transition from serious action star to self-aware icon. Statham had previously starred in Guy Ritchie's crime comedies and the Transporter series before Crank. Crank allowed Statham to demonstrate comic timing that his earlier roles had only hinted at. His deadpan delivery of absurd lines became a signature technique used in later films like Spy. Statham has said that Crank taught him to trust his instincts and stop worrying about looking silly. The film's cult status has made Chev Chelios one of Statham's most beloved characters. Statham performed his own stunts in Crank to a greater degree than in any previous film. The helicopter ladder sequence in particular demonstrated his commitment to practical action filmmaking. Crank led directly to the sequel and established Statham as capable of carrying a franchise alone. The film's success helped Statham transition from supporting roles to unequivocal leading man status. Later Statham films like The Mechanic and The Expendables owe a debt to Crank's gonzo energy. Statham has expressed interest in returning for a third Crank film, though scheduling has prevented production. The role of Chev Chelios fits Statham perfectly, requiring physicality, charm, and willingness to be absurd. Crank showed that Statham could be funny without sacrificing his action credibility. The film remains a fan favorite at conventions where Statham appears, generating consistent enthusiasm. Crank represents the moment when Jason Statham became Jason Statham, fully formed and confident. The film's use of split screens and multiple images within a single frame deserves technical analysis. Several sequences show 2 or 3 images simultaneously, presenting different angles of the same action. This technique recalls 1970s cinema experiments by Brian De Palma and Richard Fleischer. In Crank, split screens convey information density, showing Chev's face, his environment, and his objective at once. The technique also suggests a video game's heads-up display, with multiple information streams visible simultaneously. Directors Neveldine and Taylor achieved these effects in camera where possible, avoiding post-production compositing. Split screens allow the film to show cause and effect simultaneously, compressing time further. A phone call might show both Chev and the person he is calling, eliminating traditional shot-reverse shot patterns. The technique prevents the film from ever settling into a conventional visual rhythm. Split screens can also show Chev's deteriorating physical state alongside his external actions. A wound might appear in one frame while Chev fights in another, reminding viewers of his vulnerability. The technique is used sparingly, appearing in perhaps 4 or 5 sequences across the film. This restraint prevents split screens from becoming a gimmick rather than a storytelling tool. When split screens appear, they signal moments of maximum information density and narrative complexity. The technique requires active viewing, forcing audiences to choose what to watch within each frame. Crank's visual ambition extends beyond mere energy into genuinely innovative formal experimentation. The film's representation of the criminal underworld is deliberately cartoonish and simplified for comedic effect. Traditional crime films like The Godfather or Goodfellas strive for sociological authenticity in their depictions. Crank's criminals are interchangeable, motivated by money and pride rather than complex organizational structures. Carlito, the crime boss, operates from a golf course, suggesting that crime has become suburban and banal. His henchmen are disposable obstacles rather than developed characters with interior lives. The film shows no police investigation, no legal consequences, and no social order beyond immediate violence. This simplification allows the film to focus entirely on Chev's biological race against death. Realism would require explaining how a man can shoot dozens of people without attracting law enforcement. Crank acknowledges this impossibility by simply ignoring it, operating in a parallel reality. The film's criminals speak in cliches and act on predictable motivations because depth would slow the pace. This representational choice is not laziness but deliberate genre commentary, satirizing action movie conventions. Crank's criminal world exists only to provide obstacles, power-ups, and quest-givers for Chev's journey. The film never pretends to offer insight into real organized crime or its social contexts. This shallowness is the point, clearing space for the film's true concerns: pacing, sensation, and style. Crank's criminals are not characters but functions, each serving a specific narrative purpose before disappearing. Understanding this functional approach is essential to appreciating the film's aesthetic choices. The film's final shot before the credits has generated considerable interpretation and debate among viewers. Chev falls from the helicopter, apparently dead, but his hand twitches as the frame freezes. The screen cuts to black and then to a title card reading, "Chev Chelios will return in Crank 2. This ending confirms the sequel, while also suggesting that Chev's will to live transcends physical death. The freeze frame technique recalls 1970s cinema, particularly Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid's ambiguous ending. Unlike that film's tragic freeze frame, Crank's ending promises resurrection and continuation. The twitching hand suggests neurological activity continuing despite cardiac arrest, a final burst of adrenaline. This image transforms Chev's death from tragedy into cliffhanger, from ending into intermission. The sequel's opening scene shows Chev surviving his fall, albeit with catastrophic injuries. The final shot's ambiguity allows viewers to interpret Chev's fate differently before watching High Voltage. Some viewers prefer to imagine Chev dying in that moment, his mission complete, his revenge achieved. Others embrace the sequel's premise and Chev's miraculous survival as fitting the film's absurd logic. The final shot also completes a visual motif of hands that runs throughout the film. Chev's hands kill, caress, inject, and finally twitch with residual life. The freeze frame preserves this moment of uncertainty, refusing easy resolution or closure. Crank's ending is as aggressive and unconventional as everything that precedes it. The film's soundtrack album, released commercially, includes songs from the film and tracks inspired by it. Composers and bands featured include Mike Patton, of Faith No More, Death from Above 1979, and The Crystal Method. The album captures the film's energy, but cannot replicate the editing that makes the music effective. Several songs were written specifically for the film, responding to scenes and characters. The album's track listing follows the film's sequence, allowing listeners to mentally replay scenes. Mike Patton's contributions are particularly notable, as his experimental rock style matches the film's chaotic energy. The soundtrack was released on CD and digital platforms in October 2006, 1 month after the film. Critical reception to the soundtrack was positive, with praise for its coherence as an album. The soundtrack functions as a standalone listening experience for fans who want to revisit the film's energy. However, the music's impact is diminished without the visual and editing components that complete it. The soundtrack album represents a commercial product, but also an extension of the film's artistic reach. Crank's music has been used in video games, commercials, and sports highlight reels since its release. The film's title track, Crank That, has no relation to the later Soulja Boy song of similar name. The soundtrack preserves the specific sound of mid-2000s electronic and industrial rock for future listeners. For fans, the soundtrack album is a talisman, a way to carry the film's energy beyond the screen. The film's influence on later action cinema is visible in works ranging from Hardcore Henry to the John Wick series. Hardcore Henry, 2015, adopts Crank's first-person video game perspective for an entire feature film. The John Wick films share Crank's efficient world-building and focus on continuous, choreographed action. However, John Wick's tone is cooler and more elegant, lacking Crank's desperate, sweaty energy. The Korean film The Villainess, 2017, includes a first-person sequence directly inspired by Crank's aesthetic. Television series like Happy, also directed by Neville Dean and Taylor, extend Crank's gonzo sensibility to episodic format. The success of Crank proved that low-budget action films could compete with blockbusters through intensity rather than scale. Independent action filmmaking has embraced Crank's philosophy of practical stunts and creative camera work. The film's use of real locations has influenced action directors seeking authenticity over studio control. Crank's rejection of CGI has become a selling point for action films seeking to distinguish themselves. The film's video game structure anticipated the game film subgenre that includes free fire and game over. Man-directors who cite Crank as an influence include David Leitch, Chad Stahelski, and Ilya Naishuller. The film's reputation has grown as its stylistic innovations have become more widely adopted. Crank now stands as a landmark text in the history of digital action cinema. Future action films will likely continue to draw from Crank's toolkit of techniques and attitudes. The film's influence is still unfolding, still being absorbed into the genre's evolving language. The film's approach to representing pain and injury sets it apart from most action cinema, which typically erases physical consequences between set pieces. Chev's body accumulates damage visibly and permanently, with no magical recovery between scenes or after commercial breaks. His face becomes increasingly bruised, swollen, and bloodied as the film progresses toward its climax. The film shows him limping, clutching his side, and moving with decreasing agility as the poison takes hold. Unlike superhero films where injuries vanish by the next scene, Crank forces viewers to remember each bullet wound and fall. Chev's injections of adrenaline and other stimulants provide temporary energy, but do not heal his underlying trauma. The film includes close-ups of needle insertion, wound cleaning, and improvised bandaging that most action films avoid. This emphasis on physical vulnerability makes Chev more relatable despite his superhuman endurance and violent profession. Viewers feel his pain because the camera lingers on it, refusing the usual action movie euphemism of invisible injuries. The film's sound design amplifies bone cracks, flesh impacts, and labored breathing to uncomfortable levels. Chev's grunts of pain are not heroic or stoic but genuinely distressed, suggesting real suffering beneath the macho exterior. The film never presents violence as consequence-free, even as it revels in explosive action and dark comedy. This tension between consequence and spectacle creates the film's unique emotional register, somewhere between empathy and exhilaration. Chev's final fall from the helicopter represents the logical endpoint of his accumulated physical trauma. His body, pushed beyond all reasonable limits, finally gives out after refusing to quit for 90 minutes. The film honors that refusal by making every injury visible, every cost countable, every sacrifice acknowledged. The character of Kalo, played by Efren Ramirez, serves as an unexpected ally who provides crucial assistance during Chev's journey. Ramirez, best known for his role as Pedro in Napoleon Dynamite, brings a similar earnest energy to this very different film. Kalo is a former associate of Chev, who now works in a more legitimate business selling electronic equipment. His apartment is filled with computers, monitors, and gadgets that reflect the mid-2000s technological moment. Chev bursts into Kalo's life demanding help, and Kalo complies despite the obvious danger and personal cost. The scene between them provides rare comic relief that does not involve violence or sexual content. Kalo's dialogue reveals that Chev has burned bridges with most of his former contacts, emphasizing his isolation. Despite this history, Kalo helps Chev track Verona's location using cell phone signals and GPS data. This assistance proves essential to the film's plot, allowing Chev to find his enemies before time runs out. Kalo's computer skills represent a different kind of power than Chev's physical violence, complementing rather than competing. The character appears only once, yet his scene provides exposition, plot advancement, and character development efficiently. Kalo's willingness to help suggests that Chev was not always the isolated, desperate figure we see in the film. There was once a community around him, a network of relationships now reduced to ashes by his lifestyle. Kalo represents the path not taken, the legitimate life that criminals like Chev can never fully access. His brief appearance enriches the film's world without slowing its relentless forward motion. The film's car theft sequence, in which Chev steals a Dodge Charger from a valet service, demonstrates its approach to mundane criminal acts. Unlike heist films that glamorize theft with elaborate planning and cool professionalism, Crank makes car theft look desperate and sloppy. Chev does not hotwire the car with a paperclip or use any of the techniques shown in other films. Instead, he simply threatens the valet, takes the keys, and drives away as fast as possible. The stolen car is not a dream machine, but a functional vehicle, that will be destroyed within minutes. Chev damages the car during his escape, scraping doors and bumping into obstacles without concern for aesthetics. The film shows no joy in the theft, only the grim necessity of a dying man needing transportation. This utilitarian approach to crime extends throughout the film, stripping away any romance from Chev's profession. He steals because he must, kills because he must, and feels nothing beyond the immediate biological imperative. The valet does not chase Chev or call police, accepting the loss as an unavoidable cost of his job. This cynical realism about crime's banality contrasts sharply with the film's otherwise cartoonish aesthetic. Chev is not a master criminal executing perfect heists, but a desperate man grabbing whatever he can reach. The Charger becomes another disposable tool, used up and discarded like everything else in Chev's life. By the time the car crashes, viewers have forgotten its theft entirely, focused on the next crisis. This sequence encapsulates the film's philosophy. No gesture is precious, no moment lingered upon, no resource hoarded. The film's representation of time passing is conveyed through environmental cues rather than on-screen clocks or title cards. The sun rises higher in the sky, reaches its zenith, and begins descending toward the horizon as Chev runs through Los Angeles. Shadows lengthen and shift direction, providing subtle geographical and temporal information to attentive viewers. Traffic patterns change from morning rush to midday lull to afternoon congestion, reflecting realistic Los Angeles rhythms. Storefronts that were opening when Chev began his journey are closing or empty by the film's final act. The temperature seems to rise with the sun, as Chev sheds his jacket and sweats through his shirt as the film progresses. Street lighting changes from morning cool to harsh midday to golden afternoon, a natural color progression. The film's shooting schedule captured these real lighting conditions, avoiding artificial day-for-night or night-for-day tricks. This commitment to natural time passage grounds the film's absurd premise in documentary-like authenticity. Viewers who notice these details gain a deeper appreciation for the film's production rigor and temporal coherence. Chev's journey occupies roughly the same amount of screen time as real time, creating an almost real-time structure. Unlike films that cheat by showing impossible distances traveled in implausibly short periods, Crank respects geography. The Google Earth transitions show actual distances, and Chev's travel time roughly matches those distances. This temporal and spatial honesty, within an otherwise fantastical premise, creates the film's signature cognitive dissonance. Time in Crank is not an abstract concept but a physical pressure, as real as the poison in Chev's veins. The film's use of close-ups deserves analysis as a key component of its emotional and physical impact. Traditional action films use wide shots to show choreography and medium shots for dialogue, with close-ups reserved for emotional moments. Crank uses extreme close-ups constantly, filling the frame with Statham's sweating face, his dilated pupils, his gritted teeth. These intimate images deny viewers the comfort of distance, forcing them into Chev's subjective experience. Close-ups of wounds, needles, and bruises make the violence feel personal rather than abstract or choreographed. The camera lingers on Chev's eyes as they register pain, fear, determination, and dark humor in rapid succession. Amy Smart's face receives similar treatment, her fear and love visible in every pore and expression. The film's handheld shooting style allows the camera to push in and pull back organically, following emotional beats. Close-ups of objects, a phone, a gun, a syringe, give these tools the same visual weight as human faces. This equal treatment of people and objects reflects Chev's utilitarian worldview, where everything is a potential resource. The film avoids establishing shots that would provide spatial context, keeping viewers in close, confused proximity to the action. When wide shots finally appear, they feel jarring and expose how confined the close-up aesthetic has become. The helicopter finale's wide shots feel climactic precisely because they have been withheld for so long. Close-ups in Crank are not ornaments but engines, driving intimacy and urgency simultaneously. By the film's end, viewers have spent more time inside Chev's personal space than most romantic partners would. This forced intimacy is uncomfortable, invasive, and exactly the point of the film's visual strategy. The film's representation of law enforcement is deliberately minimal, almost non-existent, as a genre-aware choice. Traditional action films must explain why police do not intervene in extended shootouts and car chases. Crank simply ignores the question, operating in a Los Angeles where law enforcement has apparently vanished. One brief shot shows a police car passing Chev without stopping, suggesting casual indifference rather than active pursuit. No officer ever questions Chev, no investigation follows his crimes, no legal consequence threatens his actions. This absence is not a plot hole, but a deliberate genre commentary, acknowledging the convention by exaggerating it. The film suggests that Chev's criminal world operates in parallel to legitimate society, rarely intersecting with it. When Chev causes a multi-car collision on a freeway, no sirens follow, no police appear to investigate. The hospital shooting spree somehow attracts no police response despite the massive property damage and casualties. This fantasy of consequence-free violence reflects the logic of video games more than any possible reality. In Grand Theft Auto, police pursue the player based on algorithmic rules. In Crank, police simply do not exist. The film's refusal to explain this absence is itself an explanation. Realism is not the goal. Law enforcement would slow the pace, add complications, and introduce moral dimensions the film rejects. By erasing police from the narrative, Crank clears space for its pure action premise to unfold. This choice may frustrate viewers seeking logical consistency, but delights those who accept the film's terms. Crank's Los Angeles is a libertarian fantasy where individuals solve problems through personal violence without state interference. The absence of law enforcement is not an oversight, but a philosophical statement about the film's priorities. The film's elevator fight sequence, brief but memorable, demonstrates its ability to generate tension from confined spaces. Chev enters an elevator with two of Verona's henchmen, trapped in a metal box with enemies who do not yet recognize him. The sequence plays on claustrophobia, the fear of being unable to escape from a dangerous situation with no witnesses. Chev's face shows calculation, waiting for the right moment to strike when escape becomes possible. When the elevator doors open, the fight explodes into a hotel corridor, releasing the built tension of confinement. The sequence lasts perhaps 20 seconds, but establishes spatial awareness and tactical thinking as Chev's key skills. Unlike larger action films that require elaborate sets, Crank finds drama in ordinary architectural features. Elevators, stairwells, parking garages, and hospital corridors become arenas for life-or-death struggle. The film's low-budget forced creativity, finding action opportunities in everyday spaces other films would ignore. This resourcefulness gives Crank a grounded quality despite its absurd premise, a sense of reality within unreality. The elevator fight ends with Chev exiting into a new environment, the transition marked by a Google Earth zoom. This transition turns a mundane architectural feature into a level transition in the film's video game structure. The sequence demonstrates that action can occur anywhere, at any time, without warning or preparation. Chev is never safe, never off-duty, never free from the possibility of violence erupting around him. The elevator fight's brevity is its strength, delivering impact without overstaying its welcome. Every second of screen time serves the film's relentless forward momentum. The film's representation of Los Angeles' Korean community, while brief, reflects a commitment to authentic casting and language use. The convenience store where Chev purchases energy drinks is run by Korean Americans who speak Korean to each other. Subtitles translate their dialogue, treating Korean as a real language rather than background noise or comedy material. The store's layout, products, and atmosphere reflect actual Los Angeles convenience stores, not Hollywood approximations. Chev's interaction with the store owner is transactional and neutral, neither friendly nor hostile, simply business. This neutral representation avoids the stereotypes of Asian characters as either mystical mentors or dangerous gangsters. The film later shows Korean gangsters who speak Korean among themselves, continuing the commitment to linguistic authenticity. These gangsters are neither more nor less violent than the film's other criminals, treated equally within its cartoon logic. The Korean characters have their own motivations and agendas, not simply existing to serve Chev's story. This representational choice reflects the director's documentary-style approach to capturing Los Angeles as it actually exists. Unlike films that cast non-Korean actors to play Korean roles, Crank uses authentic performers who speak the language fluently. The film does not pat itself on the back for this authenticity, simply including it as part of its fabric. This matter-of-fact diversity feels more progressive than films that announce their inclusivity as a marketing point. Crank's Los Angeles is genuinely multicultural because the real Los Angeles is genuinely multicultural. The film's politics of representation are accidental rather than activist, emerging from its documentary impulses. This accidental progressivism may be more effective than intentional messaging, feeling earned rather than performative. The film's use of phone calls as a narrative device reflects mid-2000s communication technology and its limitations. Chev uses a flip phone, the dominant mobile form factor of 2006, which requires flipping open to answer and close to end calls. His phone's battery becomes a concern, a small detail that adds tension to an already desperate situation. Phone conversations are often one-sided, with Chev shouting over ambient noise and losing signal at crucial moments. The film shows phone screens displaying caller ID, text messages, and battery levels as on-screen graphics. These graphics anticipate the smartphone era while remaining grounded in the specific limitations of 2006 technology. Chev cannot simply look up information on his phone. He must call people who have the answers he needs. The phone becomes a quest item, a tool for acquiring information and coordinating with allies. When Chev loses his phone or it runs out of battery, he loses access to his support network. The film treats the phone as a finite resource, as precious as ammunition or adrenaline. This resource scarcity creates additional tension beyond the main poison countdown premise. Modern films set in the smartphone era must work harder to justify why characters cannot simply solve problems with apps. Crank benefits from its historical moment, when phones were useful but not yet omniscient. The film's phone logic would feel dated if released today, but it works perfectly within its 2006 context. Future viewers will watch Crank as a period piece, its technology as nostalgic as its fashion and music. The flip phone is not just a prop but a time capsule, preserving the texture of everyday life before smartphones. The film's hotel shootout sequence represents a masterclass in low-budget action choreography and staging. Chev fights through multiple floors of a hotel, clearing rooms and corridors with limited ammunition and worsening physical condition. The sequence uses the hotel's architecture creatively, with doors, furniture, and fixtures becoming weapons or cover. Chev's tactics are not heroic or cinematic but practical, based on real close-quarters combat principles. He checks corners, uses door frames for cover, and reloads his weapon whenever he has a spare second. The film shows him picking up enemy weapons, scavenging ammunition from fallen opponents, like a video game character. This scavenging mechanic reinforces the video game logic, while also reflecting real combat necessity. The hotel's guests react with realistic terror, hiding under beds and running from danger rather than helping or fighting. These background reactions ground the sequence in believable human behavior despite its cartoonish violence. The sequence avoids the action movie cliché of endless ammunition, counting shots and showing reloads explicitly. When Chev runs out of bullets, he improvises with whatever object is available, including a television set. The sequence's pacing varies between moments of stealthy movement and explosive violence, creating rhythmic interest. Unlike extended action sequences that become exhausting, this one maintains engagement through variety and surprise. The hotel shootout demonstrates that creativity matters more than budget when staging action cinema. $1 million sequence could not improve on what Crank achieves with a real hotel and genuine stunt work. This sequence alone justifies the film's reputation as an action masterpiece within its budget constraints. The film's representation of hospitals as hostile environments rather than places of healing subverts audience expectations. Chev enters the hospital seeking medicine, but the building itself becomes an obstacle course of security and bureaucracy. Hospital staff are not helpers but obstacles, trying to stop Chev from accessing the pharmacy he needs. The building's layout is confusing, with identical corridors and locked doors that delay Chev's progress. Security guards pursue Chev not out of malice, but because his behavior violates hospital rules and threatens patients. The film shows no doctors or nurses providing legitimate medical care, only the infrastructure of institutional control. This representation reflects Chev's paranoid worldview, where even potential helpers are actually threats in disguise. The hospital pharmacy, which should be a place of healing, becomes a battleground where Chev fights for survival. Chester Bennington's character works in the pharmacy, but offers no judgment, simply treating Chev as another customer. The sequence suggests that hospitals, like all institutions, are indifferent to individual suffering and focused on rules. Chev's desperation justifies his violation of hospital norms, but the film does not celebrate his lawlessness. Security guards are not villains, but employees doing their jobs, caught in a situation they did not choose. This moral complexity within an action sequence is unusual, adding texture to what could have been simple mayhem. The hospital sequence ends with Chev escaping, having taken what he needed and left chaos behind. No resolution follows, no apology or restitution, only the forward momentum of Chev's survival mission. Hospitals in Crank are not sanctuaries, but levels to be completed, obstacles to be overcome. The film's approach to character names reveals a playful attitude toward genre conventions and audience expectations. Chev Chelios sounds like a comic book character name, alliterative and slightly absurd, suggesting a heightened reality. Eve, his girlfriend, carries biblical resonance, suggesting innocence or origin, though the film never develops this theme. Ricky Verona references Verona, the Italian city of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, implying doomed romance or feuding families. Carlito, the unseen crime boss, shares his name with the Al Pacino film Carlito's Way, referencing gangster cinema history. Doc Miles, the physician, has a name that combines the informal doc with a surname suggesting distance or journey. Kalo sounds similar to Kalo or kayak, suggesting nothing in particular but sounding distinctive and memorable. These names do not reflect realistic naming conventions, but rather the stylized naming of comic books and video games. A real hitman would likely have a forgettable name, not one that announces his character with each utterance. The film's naming strategy signals its genre allegiance, prioritizing memorability over verisimilitude. Each name functions as a character tag, immediately conveying tone and expectation to attentive viewers. Eve could be a damsel in distress, but the film subverts this expectation by making her active and brave. Verona could suggest romance, but the film delivers only violence and revenge between the rivals. The names are promises the film may or may not keep, adding another layer of genre play. Crank's onomastic choices reflect the same philosophy as its visual style, heightened, artificial, and proud of it. These names have become iconic within the film's cult following, instantly recognizable as belonging to this specific world. The film's representation of the Chinese community through the herbalist scene is brief, but noteworthy for its relative respect. Chev visits a Chinese herbalist seeking an antidote or treatment for the Beijing cocktail, which is itself of Chinese origin. The herbalist is portrayed as knowledgeable and professional, treating Chev's request with seriousness rather than mockery. His shop is filled with authentic herbs, dried animals, and traditional medicine ingredients, not stereotypical set dressing. The herbalist speaks English with an accent, but is fully understandable, his intelligence and competence never questioned. He provides Chev with a tea that temporarily boosts his energy, a placebo or genuine remedy, depending on interpretation. The scene avoids the mystical Asian trope by making the herbalist's knowledge practical rather than supernatural. He does not offer magic or fortune-telling, but simply the tools of his trade, applied to Chev's problem. The Beijing cocktail's Chinese origin is not presented as evidence of Asian inscrutability or exotic evil. Instead, the poison is a product of criminal enterprise, not cultural essence, developed for practical purposes. Verona's use of the poison reflects his own cruelty, not any inherent quality of Chinese culture or medicine. The herbalist scene lasts less than 2 minutes, but accomplishes world-building, plot advancement, and tonal consistency. Unlike many action films that exoticize Asian cultures, Crank treats the herbalist as a professional providing a service. This representation may still be imperfect, but it is notably better than the genre's typical Orientalism. The scene reflects the film's documentary impulse, showing Los Angeles's actual Chinatown as it exists. Authenticity matters more to Crank than stereotype, even when stereotype would be easier and faster. The film's use of slow motion is strategic and meaningful, not the stylistic ticket might initially appear. Traditional action films use slow motion to emphasize heroism, allowing audiences to savor moments of victory or beauty. Crank uses slow motion primarily to depict moments of physiological crisis, when Chev's body is failing despite his will. His vision blurs and slows as his heart rate drops, the world around him moving faster than he can process. Slow motion in Crank is rarely beautiful but always uncomfortable, suggesting impending death rather than heroic triumph. The film also uses slow motion for moments of dark humor, stretching out absurd images for comic effect. A henchman's fall from a building becomes slow motion, turning violence into slapstick without losing its impact. Chev's face during the public sex scene enters slow motion, emphasizing his desperate concentration rather than romantic passion. The technique is used sparingly, perhaps 6 or 7 times across the entire film's runtime. Each slow-motion moment stands out because the rest of the film moves at such breakneck speed. The contrast between normal speed and slow motion creates emphasis without dialogue or musical cues. Slow motion in Crank is a language, a way of telling viewers that this moment matters more than others. The technique never feels like padding because the film has no interest in extending its runtime artificially. Each slow-motion shot earns its place through necessity, communicating information that normal speed could not convey. By the film's end, slow motion has become associated with Chev's most vulnerable moments. This association transforms the technique from visual flair into genuine storytelling. The film's final shootout at the rooftop nightclub represents the culmination of its video game structure and aesthetic. The location is visually spectacular, with panoramic views of Los Angeles that reward the player for reaching the final level. Chev faces waves of enemies that increase in difficulty, from basic henchmen to the boss character Verona. The environment provides cover, hazards, and opportunities for environmental kills like knocking enemies off the roof. Chev's health bar is represented by his increasingly damaged body, his visible injuries showing how much damage he has absorbed. Power-ups appear in the form of adrenaline shots and weapons dropped by fallen enemies, consumable resources. The finger gun gag occurs here, breaking the fourth wall and acknowledging the game's artificiality directly. The sequence allows multiple approaches. Chev can use stealth, run and gun, or environmental tactics to eliminate his opponents. The final confrontation with Verona is a one-on-one boss battle, the traditional climax of action games. Unlike earlier fights where Chev was at a disadvantage, this battle occurs on equal terms between the two rivals. The helicopter arrival adds a new gameplay element, forcing Chev to adapt his strategy mid-sequence. The rooftop location provides a dramatic backdrop for the fall that ends the film, a classic game ending. Viewers who have played action games recognize this structure immediately, whether consciously or intuitively. The sequence rewards players for surviving the journey, offering a satisfying climax that tests all acquired skills. Even Chev's death, if one interprets the fall as death, follows game logic as a game over screen. The rooftop shootout is not just an action sequence, but the film's thesis statement, its purest expression of intent.